Welcome to the Beyond Cinema Studio, presented by Celebs.com up here at TIFF, Treva Wurmfeld. Firstly, congratulations on having the film up here.
Thanks.
Shepard and Dark, obviously, dealing with this correspondence between these two guys and the two guys themselves, how does them creating a book about their correspondence, how does that find its way to you?
Within the first week of filming Sam, which was fall 2010, I went to Deming, New Mexico. Sam was working, he had mentioned that he was going to be working on this book project with one of his friends, and I didn't quite know the extent of the project or what it would entail exactly, but it just seemed like something to potentially lead to something bigger, so I just went with it. And then when I met Johnny, he was just super charismatic and interesting, and I discovered that they had this incredible backstory. They've been friends for around 45 years. And so as soon as I kind of understood the extent of their friendship and how far they went back and how close they were, and started reading some of their letters, it just seemed like a natural thing to focus on for the film.
What do you think gave him that moment of trust where he wanted to share kind of his experience with you going through this? I mean, Sam Shepard, to those who know him, is someone who never takes a plane everywhere, drives to every job he has, seems to be so kind of old school and in terms of the way he relates to technology. And so why do you think he wanted to open up and share? Was he going through a vulnerable period?
Yeah, I think so. I think that was a big part of it. I also wrote him a handwritten letter that began the project, which I think he responded positively to. And also I had met him and interviewed him about a year earlier before I actually began filming with the intent of this documentary. So we had a rapport. There was some trust established. I often questioned it myself, like, why is he divulging so much, it seemed. But then when you actually look back there's been many biographies written about Sam Shepard, despite the fact that he has this reputation for being sort of, having this huge mystique around him. And he does speak to his life experience, and people do know things about it. And there has been another documentary made about him. So, I feel like mine sort of is more getting at more. I think that there's probably an aspect of being female, and that allowed for him to maybe warm, to the situation more. Not sure.
Do you think that hanging around these guys, obviously they've got very particular traits to them and exist in a particular world, do you find that you end up changing more to fit them when you're around them, or do you feel like you're drawing them out of whoever they are and making them more modern?
No. The first one, yeah, for sure. I think there was no, they're happily, functioning in the world in a very, very particular way, which to a certain extent, I would say it reveals a lot of resistance to the modern world. But both of them in different ways show that resistance, in the ways that they, don't use computers, both have certain issues around travel, and there's just a lot of things that they do that kind of reflect that resistance to modern time.
Sam Shepard represents different things to different people. Obviously, to the New York theatre set, his plays, the obvious ones are Buried Child and True West, which has had some amazing kind of reprisals, especially with John C. Reilly and Philip Seymour Hoffman. And then, of course, the people who know him from commercial movies like the Wright stuff that he got Oscar nominated for. Which one, if any, were you more fascinated by?
When you read all of Sam's plays, you start to recognize that there are elements of his relationship with Johnny that appear in various plays. True West in particular feels like it very much. I don't want to sort of presume that I know what Sam Shepard was intending when he wrote the play, but I also feel like knowing Sam and Johnny and knowing their history now, I can certainly see elements of it. So True West for sure was the play that I looked to a lot, and Alive the Mind, Simpatico, those three probably.
Do you feel a responsibility towards them as well? Like a lot of times, like filmmakers obviously get close to their subjects and spending a lot of time with them. What was it like the first time you showed them the film, and like how kind of concerned were you as to what their feedback might be?
Well, yeah, I got nervous, about showing it to them. Sorry, what was the question?
Like, do you feel like a responsibility towards them? Like,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, not to the point of compromising what my film would be, but yeah, of course, I definitely thought about who they are and wanting to represent them in a way that felt honest and fair. I think Sam said at one point, certain things are just meant to be private, and I respect that. And I think equally so when it comes to their creative processes, like there's only so much that you can totally reveal. And so, yeah, I think that for me, what allowed my way into being respectful and considerate of them was following what they were doing in the moment, as opposed to, as well as integrating their history. But I think I didn't want to jump to any specific conclusions about their work. I kind of wanted them to speak for themselves as much as possible.
Was there one moment, if any, that totally took you by surprise in terms of the revelations that they felt comfortable sharing with you?
That's an interesting question. I would have to think. I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Was there?
Well, actually, the way that I hate to give away a spoiler for my own film, but the way it wraps up and the things that Sam sort of ends up saying, to me, express a level of self-insight that I think is quite profound. And without giving away too much, I just think he ends up kind of I guess copping to certain things that I think take a lot of courage to do.
I think also, in terms of him writing all that correspondence with Johnny over all those years and being such a wordsmith, there must be a certain element of pride associated with the correspondence itself and just the words. Do you think that plays?
Absolutely.
Into it?
Yeah, definitely. I think they both really love words, and if any, I think it might be to a certain extent the most important thing.
Is it a lost art form? We were talking about how people perhaps today have to kind of perhaps go through inboxes or whatever to find that history of correspondence with their loved ones, but with that electronic communication, do you think we've lost that art?
I do a bit, yeah, I do. I think, I'm not necessarily anti, technological progress, so I don't want to I don't want to necessarily frame it in a negative way, but there is something lost in I think pen and paper or typewriters, there's just, I sort of feel nostalgic about it maybe more than anything, but there's certainly a presence of mind when you're sitting down and writing a letter that I think maybe is lost when you're dealing with, inboxes of emails coming in all the time, and the need to respond quickly and, briefly, and I think there's something about a written letter that's really beautiful that we don't get that through email.
And is that a nostalgia that's been earned over the process of making this film, or did you come into it with that appreciation? For
me personally, oh yeah, I came into it with a personal appreciation for it. I wrote lots of letters growing up. I didn't have email until I was in college, and so all of my high school friendships were obtained through letter writing, and it was an extremely important part of my friendships that I experienced. So I definitely related to Sam and Johnny on that, and yeah.
And having done some work with Doug Lyman and his, capturing some of his work, and now with Sam, is it really creative people that fascinate you most? And if so, who's next?
That's a good question. It is creative people that fascinate me, but it's not just in the realm of the arts. I'm also very much interested in science and technology, and for years I've been filming surgeons in the Texas Heart Institute in Houston, and I've just been endlessly fascinated by their creativity in the operating rooms and in their labs and in their garages building various medical devices. And so I that's still on the plate for me, and that's something I'm actively working on, finishing that project. So that's still kind of what's up next for me.
And that started before this project,
That did,
right?
yeah.
So did you feel guilty while making this project, knowing you were being distracted from the thing that got you started?
Well, it's hard to feel guilty when you need to pay the rent,
Fair enough. Well, we appreciate you stopping by and spending a few
thanks.
minutes with us.
Thank you for having me.